Tuli mu United Nations, Lukungana Nabanja Aswalide, Prime Minister wa Uganda, era leader of opposition, leader of government business. Ali mu United Nations ayogera luzungu, ne bannange kyakoze. Lukungana Aswalide Nabanja. Tuswaluka. Kansuke nkutwaleyo kwa Lukungana Aswalide Nabanja naye Kyagulanyi musajja wa maanyi si mwangu Kyagulanyi si mwangu tugende wa Lukungana.
The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Lukungana Nabanja, Prime Minister and Leader of Government Business in Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Nezireta Lukungana, nezireta Aswalide, omulengedde yakiikiridde kaguta. Linda owulire mbaga, amatutega, eriiso tojjaawo, Aswalide atandika, kano katandika butandisi.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you warm greetings from His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, and the people of Uganda. I congratulate His Excellency Mr. Philemon Yang on his election as President of the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, and I assure him of Uganda's full support. I commend His Excellency Mr. Dennis Francis, former President to the General Assembly, for his stewardship of the 78th session of the General Assembly, and equally pay tribute to the Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, for his commitment to the work of the United Nations. Mr. President, in the face of the current global shocks occasioned by multiple human, natural, ecological, sociological, and financial crises, we can all agree that the world is not in a good place. Today, the negative consequences of disunity have given rise to conflicts, global instability, interstate rivalry, and has worsened the already existing problems of poverty, hunger, and disease in many parts of the world.
Agambye atafu Aswalide akazungu okawulira yolaba delegation ye yazze nayo wano eri ku kamera ekutezesa musanga balina okutwala obujulizi ajeno Museveni olabye alwogedde Nabanja yogedde akazungu naye simanya mukawulidde njakababuuse dda kasooka amala ebigambo.
There is therefore need to recommit ourselves to a common identity of shared humanity in the modern global village. As people of the United Nations, we should live by the Charter of the United Nations with a sincere determination to save future generations from the scourge of war. We should fully commit ourselves to upholding the dignity and worth of human person for peaceful coexistence and tolerance regardless of our differences in values, cultures, race, ideologies, and religions without political, military threats or dominion by war. Your Excellencies, we must resolve our political commitment for the full implementation of the globally agreed frameworks for the promotion of socio-economic development and advancement of all people.
Yes, Lukungana Nabanja Musafiri, economic, social advancement of all peoples. Okulwanyisa entalo, obutabeerawo obusambatuko, okulanga tubava wano okudda eri, tebazunga, tebabundabunda. Ebyo byonna byakkanzibwako mu nkolagana eya United Nations, naye ng'ensonga enkulu ya bukulembeze. Nti abakulembeze mulina okuwa ekitiibwa abantu bemukulembera, mulina okukuuma eddembe ly'omuntu erina kutyoboolebwa. Violation of human rights, nsonga ekwata kifo kya waggulu. Demokrasiya e Uganda tewali demokrasiya. Obutatta bantu e Uganda mutirimbula abantu, obutateekateekawo ntalo za buli kadde. General Museveni alina M23, M24, M25 ne M27, alina ne kino ekibiina kya Jamiru Mukulu bakiyitaani mukinzijukize, Jamiru Mukulu ADF, wala mwana bakanzidukiza nti ADF, kati abo bonna bayekera bana Museveni yabalina mu nsawo, abateekawo okukangakanga Amerika bamuwaka sente. Okitegedde, kati yali yatawanya abaana b'e Congo, babundabunda by'obugagga biri mu kubbibwa lwayo omusajja omu. Bannayuganda bali mu kubonaabona. Okitegedde, buli wantu wonna bali mu kubonaabona bannansi abaliyo. Bugamba muno tukwataganye, tugoberere ebyakkaanyizibwako mu ntukwatagana ya United Nations, naye ekyova yasinga okubityoboola obaako kategedde Nabanja Lubina.
In this regard, Your Excellency, urgent action is required to address global inequalities with regard to poverty, hunger, and disease, which continue to affect disproportionately the poorest and most vulnerable. Therefore, this is the time to ask the following questions. Why have we failed to forge stronger international cooperation in response to collective global challenges? The second question is, why is it that, in spite of the multiple global commitments derived through conceptually formulated solutions, decisions, and commitments, do all these remain unimplemented?
Nabanja agambe sexually, consexually, cosexually.
This year's General Assembly, unlike others, should seek to answer these questions. Mr. President, we are all aware that most conflict drivers begin as unresolved local or regional tensions or problems, which become increasingly complex, sometimes involving multiple actors.
Lobina kyogerekamu nti regional conflicts, home conflicts, Africa conflicts, United Nations conflicts ziva ku dictatorship, overstaying power. Those leaders who overstay in power, they are the source of conflicts, they are the source of death, they are the source of migration, immigrations, they are the source of violation of human rights, they are the source of electronic thief, they are the source of always ekigamba okyenjagalawo bakiyita batyawo ekiralawo abantu okubundabunda bakuyita bundabunda bakuyita batya okubundabunda bakuyita batya bebo bebavaako ebyo byonna abakulembeze abeeremeza mu buyinza ababba obululu bw'abannansi abakwata mu kalulu General Museveni gy'ova yakusindise olaba atya n'okugenda mu United Nations okutuulayo kubanga amanyi bandi mukwatirayo bandi mukababa ekimutiisa gwe musango wa Kyagulanyi gwe yateeka mu ICC.
Regional conflicts must be addressed comprehensively beyond security, with the need for broad and strong political commitments by the regional governments. Uganda believes in the peaceful resolution of conflicts wherever they occur. We are at the forefront of promoting regional peace, security, and stability necessary for economic development.
Nedda, Lobina, Musafiri Nabanja, don't lie the world. You are not the resolvers. You are the creators and the resolvers at the same time. You create those conflicts in Africa, and you put yourself in the picture of resolving those conflicts. Just to get money from wise people, just to get money from Europe, to get money from America, to get money from World Bank, to get money from anywhere else. That we here to resolve these conflicts. Yet you were the one who started them. You are the one fueling them. They give you money to fight them, you fuel them. They give you money to fight conflicts, you fuel them. They give you money to fight M23, you fuel them. They give you money to fight ADF, you fuel ADF. Right? No, muchitegede abatemu ababbi abakuusa abakumpanya abatandikawo entala abatandikawo obutabanguko mu mawanga gaffe mu Africa. So olaba obuzibu kati butukyalina mu Africa. General Museveni singa General Museveni ava wano ne mukulu munne Paulo Kagame, Africa egenda kutereera kuba kati obuzibu tulina buli Congo ye wali obuzibu abafiweri ngolo lutalo Museveni ne Kagame. Obuzibu obulala eyo si reporter yange, reporter yakolebwa bannafu abebufalansa bebakola report eyo nti M23 wagirwa General Museveni nani ne Kagame. Era na America ne jone ifananyi as drone pictures nga balaga nti aba M23 bava e Congo bajja Uganda Kampala no balina wa mayumba. Si byange bya World News. Kitegedde kakati nno omuntu awagira ebyo byonna ne waba South Sudan ebyaliyo era ye neyo gye bagendeyo gye basindika baganda bafeeyo ye atandikawo obutalo nakubaganya oli n'amaani yereetanga Savior neyeetanga Jesus. Mumuloza muno bine tetubimanyi oba ensi tebimanyi. Lukungana Nabanja mukama wabi yakutumye baamugwamu.
In this respect, Uganda encourages international partners to support local and regional-led initiatives or solutions for building peace and stability as prerequisites for sustained and inclusive economic growth and development in our countries and regions. We call on the increased collaboration by the international community to eliminate or reduce the incidence of conflicts caused by factors such as inequality, climate change, pandemics, new technologies, transitional organized crime, and terrorism. Uganda believes...
No. Let's not talk about terrorism. Let's talk about warmongers. Okay, terrorism tuwechiri. Ne warmongers erabiri mwamu ne terrorism. General Museveni is a warmonger. Entalo zonna eziri mu Africa gwe zowulira nti waliwo akatalo akayinamu omukono. That is a warmonger, that is a terrorist. Mubyogerako mu biwandiika Uganda mubisomera abantu naye nga mulina terrorist musula naye embuliri. Mulina terrorist asula mu State House Entebbe. Bannayuganda baterrorizinze bonna abasesese abaana b'abantu abakutulugunyiza abasunyesunye abaana banufu bali mu kkomera myaka 4. Terrorist kyasinga oyo. Baata janga manyo tebalina, that is a terrorist. Baata bayimbula janga tebalina busajja, that is a terrorist. Bayimbula janga abocheza pass, that is a terrorist. Bayimbula jaba minyo bukongo, that is a terrorist. Terrorist kyasinga oyo. Obagamba they fight terrorism. Nenga terrorist yakuwadde byoli mu kusoma bagambe come and help us, you fight the biggest terrorist in Uganda, General Museveni. Bachimanye nti akusindise terrorist yanguizeeko.
That the benefits of this world must be shared with all humanity and detests all forms of exclusion by the relatively few wealth nations. We reject the increasing competition and confrontation between major powers, which undermines the collective international responses to security, peace, stability, and socio-economic development. Your Excellencies,
negwe uli omulenzi bwe yekuutira akadingidi kati mbw agamba ku America kubange kuba muganda wa mukwano gwe Russia. Gwani agamba ku America. Wajja kwekulira akabazi kugulu buza Gaddafi.
Uganda reiterates its call for the urgent and comprehensive reform of the UN Security Council for Africa to be represented in both permanent and non-permanent categories as a special case in order to address the historical injustice and the urgent imperative to address it, and fully supports the common African position on this matter. The African Union Committee of 10 heads of state, under the leadership of the Republic of Sierra Leone, has been pursuing the mandate to promote, advocate, and canvass for support of the common African position on the reform of the United Nations Security Council as stipulated in the Ezurwini consensus and the city and
aspirated as stipulated over aspirated. As stipulated over aspirated. Lobina Nabanja bakutwanga kirabo omuvubi waffe gosinga kona Lobina kona.
SATI declaration. The position is that Africa should have 2 permanent seats with a veto if others have it, and 2 additional non-permanent seats on the Security Council. The Committee of 10 since 2005 has been driven with the hope and conviction of solving equality in representation and participation in intergovernmental negotiations for the reform of the UN Security Council to make it more responsive to the current circumstances to achieve a future of shared goals for humanity. The core aspiration
Naye so tuve mu byokusaaga mu byolwali kansoke ngejje ebintu si byamanyo wano si byakusaaga kati Lobina Musafiri Nabanja si oli gwe mwali mumanyi anyirira mutunuulira akasusu si oli omuvubi yakyuka nabagwa akasusu.
is for Africa to get representation in United Nations Security Council as equal partners and make a contribution to multilateral systems that should become inclusive, equitable, and work for international peace and security of all without paralysis or succumbing to parochial interests of major powers. Mr. President, we demand for the right to development as equal members of the international community without any preconditions and politicization, for greater human dignity, freedom, and socio-economic injustice. We call for fair access to means of production, technology, and capital for the socio-economic transformation of our economies in line with our national legal frameworks and development plans. Uganda believes that the perpetual preservation of poverty and inequalities in developing countries undermines the fundamental human rights, in particular the rights of the marginalized and the poor, and remains a threat to international peace and security, which should no longer be overlooked.
Nemwe onali mukweropa ntino mujje mungambeko mujje mututaase kinene kyawange kitobole eddembe ly'obuntu kwatonza kugamba mbu okutyobola eddembe ly'obuntu kugambweko kuba kulwanyisibwe naye nga gy'ova yalina mbeemu abali mu United Nations munene Lukungana mu general debate eno ey'ensanvu session gye balimu tebamanyi bigenda maaso Uganda kyogamba tebalabako ku Bobi Wine the People's President omusango guli mu International Criminal Court ICC tebagumanyi n'obujulizi nti no kooti yabukkiriza dda
Uganda, as a chair of non-allied movement, will work with countries of the non-allied movement as well as other countries on the intergovernmental processes that shall lead to the adoption of the UN Covenant on the Right to Development. Mr. President, financing remains one of the greatest challenges that undermine the efforts of developing countries to fully implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and achievement of its 17 sustainable goals. Borrowing is critical for financing investments in sustainable development. Sovereign debt is an important tool for financing sustainable development, enabling low-income countries to invest in infrastructure, health, education, and other critical areas. We emphasize that loans to low-income developing countries should be concessional and at zero interest rate. This will enable our countries to finance productive investments, including building infrastructure to improve connectivity, make debt sustainable in the long run, and spur economic growth, which will in turn help to improve domestic tax collection and raise revenues. Uganda, like other developing countries, faces constraints of domestic resource mobilization due to limited tax base. We call for strengthening of the international cooperation in tax matters to ensure that it is effective and inclusive by making multinational corporations pay taxes in countries of their operations, including collecting revenue generated by e-commerce in cross-border transactions. Mr. President, we fully support the ongoing discussions on adoption of the UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation and call upon all countries to negotiate constructively. We also call for the strengthening of international cooperation in the prevention of and combating illicit financial flows, with a view of ensuring that all illicit funds, all resources, including assets, are returned to their countries of origin. Furthermore, Uganda calls for the urgent reform of the international financial architecture, including the international financial institutions and their rules, to ensure equitable representation of developing countries in international economic governance decision-making that affect the trajectory of their national development. Your Excellencies, Uganda identified 4 key sectors of wealth and job creation in line with its national development plan, and that includes agro-processing, industrialization, services, information and communication technologies, digitalization, and skills development to support our socio-economic transformation. There is no doubt that affordable energy and access to affordable high-quality internet connectivity
mpulidde high quality internet connectivity, mpulidde communication, freedom of communication, nenga ddala Uganda waliyo freedom of communication. Mukimanyi bulungi ne Uganda Facebook yagibwako, mpulidde bagamba ku bya teknologiya nga byogerako mu Musafiri. Mukimanyi Facebook teriiko n'olwaleero. Mukimanyi nti bw'okwatibwa nga expressinga endowooza yo ku Twitter, ku Facebook, ku TikTok, ku YouTube, name it, bakukwata ne bakusiba emyezi 6 oba omwaka n'omusobyo. Okimanyi nti basobola okusiba emyaka 4 olw'okubawo expressinga endowooza yo, wavayo n'oyogira ekikuli ku mutima ky'olowooza. Bannaffe bangi bali mu makomera tebagibwayo lwa communicating, lwa info kujjayo kye balina ne bakyogera ne bakigamba ensi. lwa teknolojia kwesa masimu gaabwe kwesa kompyuta zaabwe niwagamba mbu computer misuse phone misuse gwe bali wano byali mugamba bere promoted naye ate Uganda java they are demoting them ostegede kubanga bagala okwenyereza mbuyinza bagala okwesiga akazigo kibange kaze jombi buli wakali diyomba buli abagenyi ngalesiga akazigo ngali mwenyereketa tukuwe kachi katunda vivi nenga guyombi guli oguna guvidu kati bebana eno batutulugunya batutta batumalawo baderi besanya balaganga bawagira communication free communication balaganga bawagira teknolojia ngeno Facebook mwaja kuteddangako internet manyo mwendo gwegule Uganda gomanya kusurviving Uganda ngokwesa internet buli lunaku mbuno cha bei ogula data atabasajja abamuguza ne bamukubako mudakikezi nga bamubbi bamututte ngagamba ddamu ogula omulala you are out of data no busamu mukozesezaachi kubanga tewali abagambako bo batubba bubbi bolaja nagamba nti omusoro batujjako mungi fe tukole tutya okitegeera ye Uganda je tulimu ya bubbi ya bufere kati bagambo ba promotinga quality internet katujirinde bigambo bye
activity is vital to catalyze their full implementation in order to realize inclusive development outcomes and benefits for our people. We need to strengthen deeper collaboration with the Global South, with the support of our partners in the North, to unlock shared prosperity by building the necessary infrastructure and connectivity to increase productive capacity for rapid growth, economic takeoff, and sustainable development. In this regard, Uganda calls on the international community to support the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Furthermore, Uganda calls on the international community to support its path to sustainable development. We encourage foreign individuals and companies to invest in the country. We welcome inflows of money, technology, knowledge, skills, and expertise as major sources of non-debt financial resources for economic development of our country. Your Excellencies, Uganda also calls for collaboration by the international community in medical research for global health to develop vaccines and treatments to combat diseases like Ebola, COVID-19, monkeypox, and improving healthcare capability in low-income countries, particularly in Africa. Uganda advocates for mutually beneficial trade and investment. We encourage that in pursuing sustainable development, foreign direct investment should be geared to adding value by processing raw materials inside our country where raw materials are produced and to export high-value products. This will create jobs, generate high incomes, and increase taxable revenues. We call on multinational companies to desist from purchasing raw materials and only selling processed products for consumption in developing countries. We equally call on developed economies and multinational companies that buy raw materials to process them and add value in their countries should take measures to institute policies that allow sharing the profits they generate in the value chain with the low-income raw material producing countries where it is sourced for shared prosperity. Mr. President, climate change remains one of the greatest challenges to the pursuit of sustainable development. Uganda calls on developed countries to provide the necessary financial, technical, as well as capacity building to support developing countries to effectively address climate change. We demand for climate justice, recognizing that richer countries, having historically profited from high emission activities for the development of their economies, and bear a great obligation to lead in mitigating these impacts. Therefore, high-income countries should reduce their emissions and equally support developing countries in their gradual transition to low-emission development pathways without using the environment as a political and economic tool to block or slow down their development. We emphasize that climate finance should be additional to official development assistance. Mr. President, developing countries face great challenges, including the increase in unilateral political, economic, and trade actions, or policies, and the weakening of multilateralism, which are flagrant violations of the principles established in the UN Charter, international law, and the purposes of United Nations. We consider that it is urgent to stop these actions that threaten the economic and social development of the countries that are subject to them, and consequently prevent them from achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Uganda reiterates its call to put to an end to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed on these sister nations under sanctions, which is a major impediment to the sustainable development. Uganda also reiterates its firm rejection to the imposition of laws and regulations with extraterritorial impact and all other forms of cohesive measures, including unilateral sanctions against developing countries, and reiterates the urgent need to eliminate them immediately. Mr. President,
soko ulire otugenda wanyuma nenjagaso tulabe wano mbu balitaliatinge sanctions zibataka ku developing countries ne sanctions ezo zachi byasoso okwogerako kutoboledde mbere obuntu yensonga cha wa sanctions okutta abantu okutulugunya abantu okubba akalulu yensonga cha batako sanctions okulya enguzi okubba ensimbi z'omiwo omusolo yensonga cha batako sanctions kati bayogerera maloza basiru badongo ostegedde kati bamutumye nti yamba kati ntyana okutambula bugo bakone bazijako sanctions zinzita kada speaker Anita Amongi bamutako sanctions tetwetaya ostegedde twagala kumalawo Kyagulanyi group ya Kyagulanyi nja kujimaraho nga nkozesa Anita Amongi Kyagulanyi yandabisana senyonyi bampakoza sanction kati sikyetaya bagambeko bamusinise kugambako yagenze nga namwatulira kubatulira naye bali bagezi wulira wano wajja wano.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Uganda took over the chairmanship of both the Group of 77 and China and the non-allied movement in January 2024. I take this opportunity on behalf of His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, to thank all member states of the group and the movement for their confidence in ensuring Uganda is in the capacity of chair. We commend the Africa Group for endorsing our candidature for the chairmanship of both organizations. This year 2024, has been a crucial year with various intergovernmental processes at the United Nations on issues that are of paramount importance to both the group and the movement. And these include inter alia, Fourth International Conference on the Small Islands Developing States, the Third UN Conference on the Landlocked Developing Countries, the Summit of the Future, the preparations for the Fourth International Conference on Financing for Development, the 2024 UN Climate Change Conference, COP29, all of which demand that we remain even more united and steadfast in promoting the interests of developing countries. Uganda therefore commends the members of both groups for keeping united in solidarity as we pursue the issues of our common interests. In conclusion, Mr. President, Uganda will continue with this stewardship, working together in solidarity to achieve a revitalized multilateral system which is capable of adequately addressing current and emerging global challenges. We firmly believe that multilateralism remains a fundamental and crucial mechanism for addressing our common challenges, namely, 1, accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. 2, scaling up action to address climate change and biodiversity loss. 3, strengthening international tax cooperation. Then 4, availing adequate concessional financing for development. And number 5, the fight against illicit financial flows and enhancing global collaboration in digital and artificial technologies to maximize the benefit to society and minimize harm, among others. I thank you for God and my country.
Nange mwadde obugalo Lobina Musafiri Nabanja muvubi waffe ani yali amanyi bagamba atanafa teyevuma ggwanga ayinza okikwatiramu awo benzo gamba nti omusajja yamukabye dda kati Musafiri yakikuttemu naye gwe owulidde Musafiri bamuwandikidde script y'okusomera agisomye agigunze naye nga byonna General Museveni ali mu kwetaasa akalira akawulira bannange sanctions ate omusango gwa ICC ate bannange tukole tutya ngali mu kwewolereza bamutaase bamujjeko akaliro katuddeko General Museveni yandibadde nga yali eyo kuba ayagala amasapaago n'okukuuma ndinga order okulaga nti wali w'amaanyi naye okulaba nga takyasobola kutambula Kyagulanyi musajja gw'oli w'amaanyi General Museveni ate okufuluma eggwanga Uganda agamba banna akalinnya bwe nti mu bwengula ICC neragira nti amulaba kamukwate mwe Kyagulanyi mulala bw'osangayo Kyagulanyi muwe ebimuli bye Kyagulanyi muwe n'omutwalo mu nsawo ng'akuli kumpi gumumpeere saagala ogumukwase gukwase edi mutwe omugambe gwa pulezidenti Kyagulanyi agwanira ebimuli bye okubanga atadde omusajja Kazito atya n'okutambula okufuluma eggwanga Uganda era agenda wano Kenya we yesurubeetera Rwanda awo kuba amanyi abo banne tebajja kumukwata naye nti agende Kyagulanyi wajjanye wajja ddadi ntontonkudi Kyagulanyi musajja wanjawulo kati Museveni atuma Nabanja Musafiri nayogera oluzungu olufu naye ensonga zitusiza tukwebaziza nnyo Nabanja Musafiri webali nagamba ku musajjawo nti omunange otanya abantu otoba eddembe ly'obuntu abadde abigamba bali naye ng'agamba ku musajja we byenna abitegedde tajja kubiddamu era abaana baffe agenda kubata kuba nti balina musango twakoma okutegeera nga atuma fulu figa ne Balamu bawaayirize Kyagulanyi Sentamu Robert Bwebwani byakkirawa Kyagulanyi mulabe edduka omwalimu akusalamu passport ye kati ya Museveni yagyesalizaamu yekka talina gatambula kwatibwa.